Hello and welcome back to Ask Claire, where we're talking women's health for Power Plate. Today I've decided just to put my plan on hold and answer a question, because this question, well, for one, I'm not going to answer it in my plan, and for two, it's a little bit interesting, a little bit different. So here's the question. It is, I've been running for about 12 weeks without any incontinence issues during this period. Today, for the first time, before I did a run, I did the Pigeon Stretch or seated 90-90 on a power plate. I leaked the whole way through my 1 hour run. Would that stretch be what made the difference, and why not? Okay, so for the people at home who don't know what a Pigeon Stretch is on the power plate, there's two ways you can do it. One is across like this, right? And the other way is on the power plate with your foot back here, like more like a mermaid or like that. And the purpose of the Pigeon Stretch is to stretch out the glutes and the deep hip rotators. So I've consulted with a physio on this one because it is out of my scope to decide what causes incontinence and what doesn't. The answer I got from the physio was that a possible explanation is that the stretch released a tight pelvic floor muscle and revealed an underlying issue. She didn't fully understand which Pigeon Stretch we were talking about, and so I'm hoping the one I showed you today is the one. She says it's unlikely that there's a cumulative effect from the running. So you've been running for 12 weeks. It's unlikely that it's like your continence problem has been building in that time, but it is still possible. There's other things that will probably be more likely to contribute, and without more information it was hard for us to come up with an answer to this. But basically, you know, what surface were you running on? Was it your same run you always do? Were you stressed? Are you transitioning through menopause? Because the hormonal changes will have an impact on your estrogen levels, which has an impact on your elasticity of your like your skin and your connective tissue. Did you go faster than usual? Stuff like that. So really the advice, first and foremost, is see a women's health physio, and I've included a link in the comments of this post. Number two, like, there are so many other factors that can contribute to incontinence while running. But running itself is a high-risk activity. So to demonstrate that point, there was a study done on university-age athletes, 19 years old average. Most of them had no kids. And they measured the rates of urinary incontinence via sport. So, for example, the golfers had 0% incontinence in the golf athletes. But track, running, had something like 76%, and gymnastics was even higher. Now, when you consider that incontinence in general populations is about 30%. That does signal that something about the lifestyle of a track athlete is contributing to a stress incontinence, and that's something that you definitely want to be aware of when you're running. And I would prefer if you didn't run until it was resolved and you went and saw a women's health physio. Other things that impact pelvic floor, your posture. So a hunched over posture, if you're running like this, it actually puts downward pressure because your ribs push down and out against the abdominal wall and against the pelvic floor. So have a look at posture and the flexibility of your ribs so that you can actually twist your spine. You're not running like a block, running like a block. Your landing pattern. So if you land on your forefoot, it halves the impact to the lower limb. So what that means is a forefoot strike, and don't just do it tomorrow, build up to it. If you land on your forefoot, there's less impact through the pelvic region from the knees up than there is if you heel strike. So have a look at how you're running. Your pelvic position, if you have an anterior or posterior, so anterior is that way, posterior is that way, pelvic tilt, then your pelvic floor is not in the optimal position. Now, running can tighten those hip flexors, and that can contribute to a less than optimal alignment through your pelvis. So just some things to think about, like if you've just been running 12 weeks, has your posture and pelvic position changed in that time? And can you soften your landing? So if you can't see a women's health physio and that's out of the question, I would like to repeat the process to be sure it is or it isn't the pigeon stretch. So if you're a menstruating female, you probably need to do this for the whole month because, again, fluctuating hormones. But if you're on the pill or you're postmenopausal, like a week pigeon stretch run and then a week no pigeon stretch run. And just be sure that you always leak when you do the stretch and you always don't leak when you don't do the stretch. And then you can say, this seems to be a problem for me, right? Now, if you're menstruating, I said you have to do it for a month, and that means you do a month with no pigeon stretch as well, just to see how the fluctuating hormones impact that for you. So if this leaking thing becomes something that happens all the time, whether you've done the pigeon stretch or not, you might consider regressing your running to a point you can handle. So there's a course on this in the links in the comments of this post. But basically, stair sprints, running up hills, it's just as hard for your heart and lungs and legs, but much less impact on your pelvic floor. And so you should experience less leaking. But if you don't, then you have to regress it further, which may mean no running for a little while, okay? And then build it back up again. Finally, like I've touched on this already with, you know, were you stressed? What distance did you run? But you almost got to keep a diary of symptoms, like, you know, what other factors were in everyday life? Did you move house? Did you run a different course, etc.? Have you been sick? All that sort of thing. So if you're sure, once you're sure it was the pigeon stretch, I mean, I'd rather you go see the physio either way, but if you're sure it's the pigeon stretch, then do it afterwards rather than before. And either way, it won't hurt you to do some deep core pelvic floor training. That's been shown to cure incontinence in 80% of people, just the Kegel, the lift and drop, the skills I showed you 2 weeks ago. If they don't help, consider it's hypertonic and try the skills I gave you last week. But ultimately, your first post and the first thing you need to do is go see a women's health physio, get properly assessed. So I feel like I haven't answered your question well, but I also feel like we've discussed how much variation there is in one symptom and one change. And hopefully there'll be an influx of women going to see a women's health physio as a result. I'll talk to you next week.